All right. Good morning, everybody. I am super excited today because today is Alexandra Wendt's launch party. Today, we get to celebrate her book of Constellations and Clockwork, which is going to be releasing on Wednesday, the 20th of this month. Guys, I am super excited about this book. You guys have seen us promoting it across social media, and we have just submitted everything, and we've gotten the proofs back, the e-proofs. The ebook is gorgeous. The paperback is gorgeous. The hardcover edition is absolutely beautiful. It's got a special cover underneath it. So for those of you who end up purchasing it, keep an eye out for that. So now we're going to be bringing on Alexandra. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Stephen Howard. I am the founder and head of publishing at Storyweaver Publishing. And so I'm excited to be having this interview live stream with Alexandra Wendt.
Hey.
Good. Hey. So for those who don't know, I am on the West Coast. So it's 7:30 my time. But Alexandra, you're over in Italy. So you've already been enjoying all of today so far.
Yep.
So what time is it over there for those who don't know how to math that far ahead?
It is 4:30 p.m.
Man, so it's getting ready for dinner time. Like
we're gonna go out to dinner actually right after this.
Nice. Yeah, whereas it's like bitterly cold and freezing where I am over in Eastern Oregon, I imagine it's probably a comfortable 70 degrees there.
Actually, it's a little bit chilly here. I'm in Florence, and it's like, I think 60 degrees, 50 degrees maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so not too bad.
Not too bad, no.
Good. So, guys, Alexandra has been working her tail off over the last year. And a lot of it has been shared on her Substack with subscribers. We've also had, gosh, I am not fully caffeinated this morning. My mind just went blank. We'll start off with a question, and then I will caffeinate myself, so that way my brain's functioning a little bit better. So, Alexandra, why don't you tell me and the readers a little bit about yourself and what got you into writing in the first place?
Yeah, so I'll start, since I'm in Italy, I'll explain why. I came over here to study art history, and so that was kind of my big thing for a while in college. I did my master's here in Florence in Italian Renaissance art, which obviously inspired the book a lot. So Italy's been a big part of my life recently. But even before that, I've always been drawn to historical stories, fantasy, of course. But like when I was in high school, I read a lot of Victorian literature. And so even as a little kid, I just read a ton. I'd always loved to write. I've been keeping a journal since, I don't know, I think kindergarten was the first time I got a journal at my birthday party. And so I would just, try to write as well as a 5-year-old could. And I've always just been very fascinated by books, and writing is always just very ingrained in me. I wrote my first novel at 14. Terrible. I hope it never sees the light of day. But that was something I did work on all through junior high and high school. I learned how to really revise and edit throughout that process, and also how to write, at least kind of how to write sequels and expand the world. And so when I got kind of more serious about it in college and started kind of looking into agents and publishing, that really helped prepare me for the subsequent books I wrote. And so this one I wrote when I was in Florence, right after I finished graduate school. And yeah, that's where I am today then.
Very cool. And then what led to you writing, and like how has the Lord used that in your own life?
Ooh. Yeah, so as I said, writing is just always kind of been, it's always been a part of me. I don't really know like one specific moment, but I will say What's been kind of interesting is that even though I'm a cradle Catholic, so born and raised Catholic, but writing was always something I kind of kept separate from my faith life. It was something, and it was kind of subconsciously, it was like, well, this is for me. God, I'll ask you to help me in these other areas of my life, but writing, that's something that's just for me on my own time. And that was kind of the mentality I operated by until this book, actually. And what happened was, which I might get into deeper later, I went through kind of a spiritual crisis in the late summer, fall of 2020. And that it ended up prompting this book. But at the time, it kind of devolved into scrupulosity. I got really kind of obsessive about, oh, is everything I'm doing a sin? And, am I going to go to hell for like every little thing I do wrong? And that also turned to my writing. And then I thought, oh, well, how can I write then if I'm worried that everything I write is going to be, heresy or something? So I thought, I'll stop writing for a few months. I was just finishing up a story anyway that to be honest, I wasn't super into. So I thought, let me leave it all for just a few months at least. And the idea for this book was already in the back of my mind. And so I kind of let it, percolate there for a while. And I thought, so I was trying to pray a lot more in this period too. I thought, okay, God, I'm going to give it all to you. I still want to write. I still feel like that's something I'm called to do, but I'm going to let you be in charge of whatever I write next. And so when I was in a better place to go back to it and I started this book, I would actually, every time I opened up Scrivener to continue drafting, I would start with a prayer. I would just like pause for a second, just like a quick prayer that the Lord would guide me. And I did that for pretty much the entire time I was drafting. I still try to do it, admittedly not always the best at it, but it was this very interesting sense I had, because I thought if I give my writing over to God, it's going to be, I have to write things a certain way. I can only write about certain topics. It all needs to be in this, pretty little Christian box. And my experience writing this book and actually giving it over to the Lord, totally not like that at all. So it's been a really amazing experience, actually.
That's fascinating, because I have a similar story with mine, where it's like, when I was growing up, it was like, yeah, like I love writing, I'm going to do this, like I want to be an author, there's nothing else I wanted to be in life, but it was mine. Like I didn't understand what it meant to actually give it to the Lord until I started my publishing process back in 2020. And then he was just like, you need to write Christian fantasy. I'm like, but no one reads that because it all sucks. Like why would you have me do that? Yeah. And it is interesting when you actually are asking the Lord for the inspiration. It does change how the story looks and flows, and it definitely does go in directions that you don't expect it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't think I could even touch anything dark in my story at first, or I thought it just had to be almost, not that I never intended to write anything preachy, but you almost kind of had that sense of like, oh, well, it needs to kind of knock people over the head with Christianity, like don't strain anything too dark or anything like that. But in actuality, I learned that no, you can write about really dark and difficult subjects and still bring in that Christian light to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The world is dark and growing darker by the day, and it's just real life. Things are hard, things are difficult. Christians struggle with, mental illness, abuse, doubts, and all of those should be talked about and should be shared with one another. If I remember correctly, it's James that says that we're supposed to bear one another's burdens.
Yeah.
We're supposed to help. We're supposed to come alongside and help our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. But if we don't know about those struggles, we can't assist in that. And so writing about those dark things Like I wrote about my past abuse at the hands of my grandfather in my book, and that heavily influenced my writing. Your story of questioning, which again you can mention, we'll get into later. Those are real life things that people deal with on a day in and day out basis. When they read that through the eyes of a character, one, they can feel seen. They feel like someone understands, and it might give them the courage to reach out and be like, hey, you know what? I struggle with that too. And the more we are able to talk about it, the better we can encourage one another as believers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when it comes to this book of Constellations and Clockwork, why this story? So you said you were working on a story previously, and then it kind of just went, and don't really want to do this one anymore. Why this one? What about this story grabbed your attention and was like, you need to write me?
Yeah, so it's kind of a twofold answer. The first is the inspiration behind it, of course, is Renaissance. It's not set in Renaissance Italy, but the world is based off of it. And I did that on purpose because that's the subject I studied in graduate school. And I just felt, even though it was a great experience academically to just get all of that knowledge and be able to do all of this research, it really burned me out. And I just felt at the end of it, very done with academia. I just couldn't go on anymore. And I thought, I need to regain my love for this subject that I previously did love. And so in part, that's why I chose the setting of the historical basis of the story that I did, to just play around with that and have fun with it. But then the second part on the spiritual side was mainly through Clemenza's character, although in many ways through a lot of the other characters too. I was kind of working through my own doubts at the time and my own struggles in my faith life. And these questions I had about how do I know what's true, basically? How do I know what to believe? The world just seems very scattered right now, and all of its beliefs. And yeah, so it was a lot of this. I need to find the truth, essentially.
Yeah, that's really good. And we did have a comment that I thought actually, like we have the Q&A coming up later, guys. So for anybody who has questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. We are able to do this cool thing where we pull it up onto the screen for Alexandra to be able to see and interact with. Great question. Because this wasn't what it was originally titled. There was back and forth discussion on what would kind of fit the narrative of the story, but ultimately, what led you to this one?
So first, the structure of Constellations and Clockwork, it sounds like, I don't know, an academic treatise to me or something. It's just the way it's kind of phrased. So I loved that immediately. But then both Clockwork and stars are important in the story, both kind of literally and symbolically. The story utilizes clockwork technology. That's like if you think of like the steampunk genre, for example, that utilizes, steam technology, industrial revolution. Mine, I call it, clockpunk, because it's all clockwork technology. So there's that. And then the constellation refers to, well, specifically in the story, as part of the world building, it refers to this overarching system of values that's in there, which I won't, get super into now. You'll have to read the book to find out about that, because it's a bit of an explanation. But it refers to that, but then also stars themselves play kind of a metaphorical role in the story. Clemenza's always kind of like looking up and trying to see the stars at various points, and she can never find them. And so, yeah, I wanted the title to kind of reflect both of those aspects in it.
Yeah, when we were brainstorming ideas on our end as a team, we try to not have like a generic sounding title, and coming up with all of the different ideas, the constellation and the clock. I love the clockwork portion of this story. Like, there isn't a genre that Clockpunk technically falls into because it's like its own thing, but we need more Clockpunk stories out there. So
Yes.
like, who knows, this might start a revolution and we're going to get an entire influx of Clockpunk stories after this.
So
It'd be awesome. So we started with you last year, which is hard to believe that it's already been a year.
yeah.
But what does your publishing journey look like before Storyweaver?
Okay, so for previous books, I did query literary agents, not for everything I wrote, but for some stuff. I got, some book or one book in particular in college did get some interest, but ultimately I didn't get a bite on it. And then I went through a period where I wasn't writing a whole lot, or I didn't feel like querying, but I did finish writing until this book. And so I started this book. Well, the ideas I got for this book were in the fall of 2020. But as I said, I just kind of let it simmer in the back of my mind for a while. I started writing in February of 2021, and I finished the first draft, I think, late that summer. I'm a pretty slow drafter in general. I'm just, not very fast at it. Then I did revisions. I got feedback from critique partners and beta readers. And in this time too, I got married and I gave birth to my son. So there was also a lot of pause and then having to pick it back up again. And when I was ready to publish, to query, to get ready to publish, it was the summer of 2023. And before that, I had been kind of building up a list of agents to query, but I was honestly a little bit hesitant because I felt the story was so specific and I knew it had specifically Christian themes in it. I wasn't quite sure if it would do very well in a secular market. I wasn't quite sure if I would find an agent who'd be interested in it. And so I was planning to query them, but I was a little bit nervous about that. And then I heard about all of you. And when I read what you were looking for, like specifically Christian stories that dig into dark topics, I thought, well, this is absolutely my book. Like, it fits it perfectly. And so you were actually the very first people I sent the book to, in fact. So it worked out perfectly.
Well, I'm not going to complain about snagging you from everybody else. Because this book, reading through it, there was, you have a lot of elements of philosophy in it. And the philosophical moments in there are very deep. Like, they're very, like they really cause you to think and to wrestle. And I remember when I was reading through it, because my portion of it, for everybody else, is I'm the theological review. So we have 3 steps to reviewing a submission. There's the content, there's editorial, which basically kind of goes into what it's going to need as far as editing goes, and then the theological, and that's just to make sure we're not accidentally publishing heresy, because that would kind of be a bummer. But reading through it, man, just the visual, and it's gotten better, because I know that you worked with Emily on the world building and all the other kind of stuff. You drafted the synopsis of the houses, and like all of these things. So like, I know it's only gotten better since the last time I read it. So like, I'm super excited to be able to go through it again. And y'all should be super excited to be reading it as well, because it's going to be fantastic. That kind of leads in. So we'll draw back the curtains for everybody for a moment, because I know you've shared some with your subscribers. And for anybody who's new here, hi. But publishing is an involved process. And most people don't know what that actually looks like. A lot of people have opinions about it on Facebook, but they don't actually know what it actually looks like. So what has the publishing process looked like for you? And then what was the most challenging part during this year that we've been prepping for launch?
Yeah. So overall, to just kind of give like an overview for people who, I mean, I know a lot of people who follow me probably know this, but in case you don't know, it started off with the Kickstarter. And it was really exciting. It was also more mentally draining than I thought it would be, although that maybe shouldn't have surprised me. It was just so involved. I had never been, I mean, I'm always active on social media, but I never posted as consistently as I did during the Kickstarter. But it was a very, very fun process. And so we did that. And then we did the cover design. Actually, that came a little bit earlier than I was expecting, but I was super excited about it because I love book covers. And I've been, of course, like dreaming about my own book cover one day. So that was really fun to work with. And then after that, I think it was, yeah, then the developmental edits. And Emily was just a fantastic editor. She was so much fun to work with. I had the time of my life doing them this summer, honestly. Even though I was on a deadline, I had 2 months to do all of them. And it was, I mean, it's not like the book didn't like fundamentally change as I was doing them, but there was still a lot of work. There were a lot of scenes cut, moved around, things rewritten, pieces of the world building I had to kind of think through again. And so that was, I would say that was one of the most challenging parts too, even though it was fun, because I had a hard time just kind of organizing everything in my head. Like I had all these things I needed to do, but it was hard to know kind of what order to do them in. Yeah. And then after that was the copy edits, which I did 2 rounds of actually, because I talked about that with my editor, Cheyenne, and we kind of thought that was best to get, I don't know, just kind of as many eyes on it as possible. It is a pretty big book. And yeah, as you said, it can get kind of deep at times. So just best to be thorough with it. But that wasn't, at least at that point, it wasn't super challenging then. I know a lot of people had asked me, like, oh, why are you still doing so many revisions and edits on this book? Like, I thought it was accepted by the publisher. So why are you still doing this? And I explained, I had a whole lengthy explanation in my Instagram story a couple months ago that's in my highlights now if anyone wants to watch it again. But the short form is like no book is perfect, basically. I mean, even published books could still theoretically go through rounds of revisions and editing again. And that's just kind of how publishing works. I mean, of course, you're expected to do more work on the book even after it's accepted. So yeah, that's my little explanation on that too. But overall, it's been a super exciting process and I've really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. And yeah, I mean, it really is. It's an involved process. And I would say that we aim to try to involve our authors in more of those decision-making processes than a traditional publisher would. They tend to take the book and then they're going to kind of do their thing with it. You will get some say, but not necessarily as much as we strive to have our authors have say, or especially over the creative side of their book. And with the cover design, you know, that going back and forth, not just, hey, what's the concept? This is your final book cover. Congrats, whether you hate it or not, this is what it is. Like going and trying to get those little details that the author sees need to be there. And yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, like, we do developmental edits on every single one of our books, period. The developmental edits is the big 10,000 foot overview of the book, the plot, the structure, the characters, the arcs. All of it comes together. Is there enough information for the reader to be able to see, feel, and experience the world that they're diving into? It's, I would say, one of the most important, not just because I used to be a developmental editor, but because it has so much to do with the story itself. And, you know, typos, they make it through. You could have 18 different people look at it, and there's still going to be a typo. I have a copy of the Fellowship of the Ring that misspelled Gandalf no less than 5 times within the book. And this is from a major publishing house. Like, this is Gandalf's name. So it's like those little things, you know, but if you have the story settled and squared, those things will tend to disappear into the background a little bit. And obviously we strive to have as few typos as possible. But,
yeah, of course.
But people look at that and they're like, well, you're, like you said, the book's already written. Why would you go through it again? It's a great question. And I feel like too often people will just kind of bypass it, which is why we wanted to kind of talk about it and let people know kind of what you've been working on. Because, like, a lot of it is super hard work. Like you were saying, you having to, you know, readjust stuff. Like, as a writer, that takes a lot of mental gymnastics, because you're like, but that's not where it happened originally. But now it needs to be back here or over here.
And then it can create a domino effect too. You change one thing and then you didn't know it changes like 10 other things, and suddenly it's a whole headache.
Yeah, I ran into that with my second book. I added, I had fan created characters that I inserted into my second book, and it created a giant plot hole for my ending that I had to then figure out how to do. And I rewrote the ending of book 2 completely from what's published, to include the option of a reunion for 2 other characters. That's that domino effect. Yeah, there was definitely some stress during that period of time.
Yeah.
I wanted to pull up a couple of questions here because there was a good one. I thought this was a great. Was there a character you found most enjoyable to write, and maybe a character you most identify with?
Ooh, I love this question. It's also hard to answer though, because I love all of them for different reasons. I would say a character I found most enjoyable to write that I didn't expect was Hilary, actually, he's one of the point of view characters in the book, also kind of an antagonistic character. He ended up having a very, very strong voice to me and a very, very strong personality that I actually was kind of rereading a scene from the very, very first draft a few weeks ago with him in it, and I almost didn't recognize him. It was how much he had changed throughout the process. I found him enjoyable. Gianpaolo was also really, really enjoyable. The first draft, it was only from Clemenza's viewpoint, and then I added Gianpaolo's and Hilary's afterwards. And part of it was Gianpaolo was just like screaming to get heard in his very quiet way. And the moment I started writing from his point of view, it just clicked. And I was like, yeah, it came very easily and naturally to me. Anyway, character I most identify with, it is probably Clemenza. She was kind of the very main character, kind of the driving force behind my own struggles that I was putting into the book. So definitely her, but I do identify with the others in certain ways.
Yeah, that's great. There's some great questions, you guys. Keep them coming. We're nearing the part where the Q&A is coming up. So keep dropping them in the chat. We will definitely be pulling up all of the comments, because these are great. I love it. What have you learned in the last year about yourself, your writing, and what the Lord is doing with your story?
Oh, just the last year. Yeah, this is a tough one to answer. I have learned I've learned how much more there is to writing behind actually just writing. For one thing, I mean, of course, I knew that marketing exists. I knew that all of this, practical stuff on the side exists, but I've just learned a lot more about that and kind of how to do it effectively, what works, what doesn't work. So that's kind of more on the writing side. About myself, I mentioned I'd gone through a spiritual crisis right when I started that story that, I've thankfully on the other side, although I do still occasionally struggle with scrupulosity. There are still, sometimes questions or doubts, but for me right now, it's mainly about becoming more confident in being able to speak about my faith in just kind of a natural, normal way, be able to talk about it, even defend it. And so that's something I'm still learning, but I've definitely gotten better with. In terms of what the Lord is doing with my story, man, I don't even know sometimes. Like it has felt very different from all the other books I wrote in the past in this kind of inexplicable way. In one way, the book was very, very easy to write and natural. In other ways, it was also, one of the hardest things I've ever written. So that's just been very interesting to me.
Yeah. And what has been, because like for a lot of writers, and you'll see this in writing groups, authors are probably some of the loneliest people, or can be, because we have whole worlds trapped inside our head and nobody really understands how that works.
Yeah.
My wife is constantly like, how does your brain like that? Like, she's like, you just remember things from your world. I'm like, I have literally been memorizing this stuff since I was 16. Like, this stuff is embedded and it's ingrained into the brain butter. Like, it's there. It lives rent free in my head all the time. And characters are constantly having conversations in my head. And she's like, sometimes it's called schizophrenia. I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. Like, but what has been like your support system? What does your support system look like between groups, betas, family? Like, what does that look like for you during this last, well, really, I'd say the last year, but for your process in general?
Yeah, so there are a few I'll mention. One, of course, I have, writer friends online. I have, the people who are critique partners and beta readers for this book just did a fantastic job, and I'm really indebted to them. I have one writer friend in particular who we've been meeting like every month to just video chat and just talk about writing and books and even life in general. And she's been super great. Really helpful with everything. Was also one of my critique partners for this book. My husband as well, who's here, he should come over here now. He's my like main support system though, and my rock. This is Lorenzo.
Special guest incoming.
The first of our longs here. No.
No.
First and not last one.
Yeah.
Hi everybody.
So it's Lorenzo. Tell them how we met.
We met here in Florence. So here is my dad's studio, actually, with all the frames in the background.
His dad's an art conservator, so that's where we are right now, is his studio. Yeah. Yeah, the
Wi-Fi at my house is not very good, so we went here. Sorry, but yeah, we met here in Florence, and it was right before the pandemic, like the year before, and meeting Alex was very, was something unexpected. But once you get to meet her, and during the pandemic, there was all this craziness about, oh, we don't know what's gonna happen of you if you have to come back. They were like threatening to send her back or stuff like that. Yeah. So we decided to step up the game and get married, so we wouldn't get separated. And so far, and for the rest of our life, is going to be a great journey. Yeah. With the little one coming, another one coming.
Yeah, we have one son, and I have another one due in the spring. So
yeah.
Yay! Yeah. That's so exciting.
Yeah, but so we dated my the whole year. I was in graduate school studying here in Florence. And so, I say the book was very much taken from, inspired by my studies here in Florence and graduate school, but then also he was such a presence in my life during that time. And so, yeah, he's just been an incredible support for me throughout the entire journey. He was with me, during my spiritual crisis, helping me through that. He was reading early drafts of the book, and he's a huge history nerd too. So he was talking to me about, mercenary companies and all of this stuff. He's an information designer too. So he's been helping me with my social media posts.
Yeah, I have a background in art, in belle arti, in arts and
yeah,
coming from a family like this. My mom was a conservator, so I did artistic high school, they're called here, and but then I realized I couldn't follow in the step of my my giant parents, and so I went to design as a backup to find a way to live. But yeah, so I'm a huge history nerd, as every other guy. I don't know about you, but also about the Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire,
yes. But fantasy, it's a big thing, and Lord of the Rings, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And military history. So I try to give my, Alex, this kind of also, from. She didn't want to let me write anything until the draft was very advanced. So
yeah.
But from someone that is now really into, I'm into fantasy, all sorts, but especially these young adult kind of team, now very expert. So it was very interesting to see, and I think I try to be very unbiased in giving my feedback.
Yeah, no, you gave good feedback.
Yeah.
So. And he helped me a lot with the world building on the more historical note, since that's kind of his area of expertise.
And so if you find for the Italian audience, it's all the Italian is correct. If there's something not correct, it's
his fault if any Italian is not correct.
From the beginning, everything I read was perfect. So she's very good in Italian too, so don't worry about that.
Yeah. Right. So I know that if I get any complaints about anything in Italian, I send it his way.
Yeah.
And so Lorenzo, what does it look like for you, having watched Alexandra go through this publishing process over, let's just say, the last couple of years? What's that been like for you?
For me, it's seeing Alex writing and being so completely immersed in her world, and writing is seeing it's kind of weird because you see a force of nature, but it's there writing in the computer. So it's not that goes around and do stuff, but it's there. But when she's in her place, she's unstoppable, unless your toddler son comes and destroy everything, or
knocks my coffee over like he did this morning.
Exactly. Or knocks your coffee off or something like that. Beside that, which is the only thing that can stop her, it's very interesting, but also I really saw her faith getting stronger and stronger with writing the book as well. And from a certain point of view, also mine. So since we are going through this together as a family, as one, and it's a journey like anything else. And a book is one of those art form that is probably the most complicated of all, because it's not just about the coherence. When you do a painting or stuff which is you can, it is there, you can see it, you can change it, because our vision is one of those things that are very precise, and 80% of our brain is meant to elaborate visual imagery and related to it somehow. So writing and picturing what you're writing, and keeping track of all the stuff going on and making it something cohesive is just like unbelievable to me. I think it's one of the most complicated art form. I don't think I'm the only one saying it. I think other like intellectual people. I don't remember specifically who, but I think I think that that's what, from my point of view, seeing her work is. Sorry for all the gestures.
No, I talk a lot with my hands too. So no, I would agree. It's writing is difficult because like I enjoy we'll have rounds of family paint nights and stuff and just do fun things with acrylics and 30-minute episode of Bob Ross, and now suddenly I was able to do mountains. It just made sense. It just clicked in my brain. My wife's like, what? What? I was like, what? She's like, I'm like, it made sense on how he did it, with the happy little trees and whatnot. But doing that, because like I see my world in my head as clear as like a movie, and probably as clear as a master painter sees his artwork before he's even done it. But yeah, it is one of those things where you're working with abstract and then you're just putting into text and you're having to paint with words essentially. Yeah, it is a very difficult but very
in a medium that is very complicated because you don't have the whole picture all together all the time. You have to go up, up and down and deep and so that's the most amazing part, I think. And
hard for sure. Yeah, very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when it's like, hey, you wrote a lot of words. We need more. Like, what do you mean more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this is your debut novel, and it's going to be, we're only a few short days away from it being out and released into the wilds of the interwebber nets. I think what readers really want to know is where they can find you to be able to follow your journey for the rest of the way, and what's next for the story. We did have a question in here that we'll pull up, but essentially it was, is there a book 2? What does that look like? Are there sequels? What do you think?
So, well, first I'll answer the where can people find me, since it's the fastest one. So if I can, actually, I don't know if I can add it, and I'm not able to add in the chat first. Anyway, I am on Instagram at awentwriting, Wendt spelled like my last name, not the verb Wendt. You can find me there, Instagram, awentwriting. I have an account on X. It's not technically active, but if you're on X as well, or Twitter, whatever you call it, same thing, awentwriting. My website is alexandrawendt.com. It's a little bit of a work in progress right now. Right now it's mainly a landing page for my other links, but you can find me there. I have a Substack called Till We Find Joy, but the link for it is my name.substack.com. So alexandrawendt.substack.com. Yeah, you can find me there, and I think that's it. I'm not on TikTok. I will probably never join TikTok, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. You said alexandrawendt.substack.com?
Yeah.
All right, so we've dropped the links, at least the written ones, down in the chat for you guys, so that way you can find her on all the places and follow her. So what comes next?
So there is going to be a book 2. I am writing it right now. I'm trying to write it quickly because, as I said, I'm going to have a baby next spring. So going to see how much I can get done before then. But I'm super excited about it because as of now, at least, it's going to have a bit more like political intrigue in it. It'll probably stay in just like one location too, whereas this first book is kind of a whole journey. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
One of the crazy thing we tell it, we tell each other all the time when we study history, like, and we compare it to Game of Thrones, kind of like politics, and like if you study Italian history and politics in the Renaissance, like Game of Thrones has nothing, cannot compare. Like remotely.
Yeah, Italian Renaissance politics was some next level mastermind stuff going on.
The picturesque characters, like the murders and the mysteries and like the craziness around and the wars and
so I've been rereading a lot of old books from grad school, actually in preparation for book 2, just to kind of get a better grasp on the political structures at the time. And yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Now, granted, most of my formal education in Italian Renaissance history comes from Assassin's Creed 2, so I won't hold it to like as concrete fact. But yeah,
the one set in Florence was pretty accurate though, like the buildings and stuff.
Yeah,
I never, but
the game was fantastic. That's a side note. But yeah, no, I would say I fell in love with the Renaissance period because of that game, and just the beauty, the storytelling, obviously, and that political intrigue was just very rich and very, very in depth and fascinating to learn about.
Yeah.
But I can see a lot of people very excited in the comments for book 2 already, and book 1 hasn't even released yet, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So before we have one last thing before we get to the Q&A session and we start pulling up all of your wonderful questions, and that is the predictive text prompt. So we've got a prompt from Alexandra. When Hilary asked Clemenza to do the unthinkable, she said. So plug that into your phones and drop the responses in the chat. I'm going to pull up my phone just because I'm super curious. I'll make sure it's in my wife, the thread with my wife, so that way if I accidentally send something to somebody, it's at least to her. She'll know why I'm doing it. Let's see.
Also, shout out to my dad, Grandpa Stefano, too.
Taking care of our son this whole time.
Yeah. So
props to the grandparents.
We have to come all the way to Florence.
All right. So mine is when Hilary asked Clemenza to do the unthinkable, she said, "I would like to see you tomorrow morning."
Yeah. She probably would say that.
Okay, so we'll switch to Q&A, and I'll just kind of put this up. Oops. Wrong tab. There we go. Okay. When Hilary asked Clemenza to do the unthinkable, she said it was a good thing to do. Well, I guess we'll see from the book whether that turns out to be accurate or not.
Yeah, that was actually inspired by something that happens in the book, so you'll find out.
Dun, dun, dun. And we have, when Hilary asked Clemenza to do the unthinkable, she said the two of us had a good relationship.
Definitely not.
Yeah, Bree is, for those of you who don't know, Bree is one of our project coordinators with the publishing company. She's also the copy editor. And so she has read through, so I guarantee you she knows where this is from and is probably having a very good laugh. Oh my God, when Hilary, I thought you'd never ask.
Amazing.
Sounds like that's going to be a fun time. All right, so I'm going to scroll back up here, and then we're going to officially enter into Q&A. Let's see. By K Sunflower, are there any real world people your characters were inspired by?
Ooh, I like that. So I very purposefully don't do that. But that being said, yeah, I think there are certain like characteristics and traits in people I meet or people I know who even like subconsciously will come through at certain parts in characters. That being said, Clemenza actually, there were certain parts of her that were inspired by my great grandma on my mom's side, who I never met her. She unfortunately died, I think, shortly after I was born. But I heard a lot about her from my mom because my mom just always spoke like so highly of her, particularly like her strength and her resilience. And those were aspects I really wanted to put into Clemenza, this kind of like, nothing will stop me. I'm going to keep going. I will survive no matter what. And then fun fact, Clemenza is the oldest of 13 in the book. And so is my great grandmother. So I wanted to
Oh, wow.
nod. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, we got some additional ones coming in. So we've got put pineapple on the pizza.
If they had pizza anywhere else.
Yeah, that's not pizza, but abomination. You said, I won't just because you asked. That is actually a very Clemenza response.
Yeah, she would say something like that.
Then we got, she said she was not sure what she was doing with her life. I feel like that would also be a very Clemenza response. All right, so then next question.
Ooh.
So was it easy for you to stick with the original idea and plot of the books? And then they're super excited for reading it.
Thanks, Sirius. So yeah, it was, I always whenever I write, I allow things to change as I go along. I'm always very open to that. But there are certain kind of like non-negotiables that I always want to keep. From stuff with world building, like of course the clockwork technology. And I knew the plot, I wanted it to be a heist, but it actually took me a long time to admit that to myself and call it a heist, because I feel like there's so much pressure with that, particularly thanks to Six of Crows. But finally I'm like, okay, yes, it's a heist. That's what I want to do. So I was very, I want it to be this, I wanted it to be a journey. And so, once you know like what you want the book to be and kind of have these non-negotiables, I'd say for the most part, yeah, it was pretty easy for me to stick with it.
Nice. And we had this question from K Sunflower. I had dropped in the chat 100%, but would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really good you asked this. So yes, originally when I wrote this book, I was planning to submit it to the secular market. And so I actually wrote it kind of specifically thinking about non-Christians reading it. And so that's why I was very much like, I don't want to just like beat people over the head with Christianity here. So yes, absolutely. I would say it's for anyone who likes kind of intellectual and philosophical questions too, because kind of as we mentioned, there are a lot of those throughout the book. So if you like to think about kind of the deeper questions in life, you'll especially like it. But no, you 100% can enjoy it without being a Christian, even because it is also a fantasy world. So these characters aren't Christian either. It's, a whole different, they don't even really have much of a religion, I would say. It's kind of more spiritually based.
Yeah, and for those who don't know or are new with us or joining Storyweaver Publishing, we are a hybrid Christian publisher, and there's going to be stories that are that have more elements of Christianity. So my books, God is physically present, within my books. But in Yakira's, who was an author who published last month just before Alexandra, and then Alexandra's books, they're not explicitly Christian, but they have the Christian value system as a foundation for it. As a publisher, our motto is honest, raw, gritty. So dealing with topics that a lot of other Christian authors don't tend to want to do, things around, abuse, human trafficking, doubt. Like, is it okay for these things? Like, why does God let bad things happen? Like, we want to wrestle with these types of questions through the medium of storytelling. So whether you're Christian or not Christian, these books can still be for you and still be incredibly enjoyable. Great question for that. And then I 100% agree with this one, 100%. And you guys haven't even seen the hardcover edition, which is...
Oh, Benita did such a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, I confirm also as
He confirms.
my undergrad was in editorial design back at Politecnico di Milano. So I also
He approves of the cover highly. Yeah.
Nothing that needs to be from me. I'm nobody, but I really like it.
Yeah, it was just the little subtle things that she did on the cover, just pulled it all together. And the colors themselves are just, they flow so beautifully together.
Yeah.
And then another great question. You guys have been asking great questions. Feel free to keep them coming. So hardback versus paperback, how are they produced? So that would fall a little bit more on me because Alexandra has no idea. But we were talking about it before we got on the stream. So there's different ways. So for those of you who don't know, every book has an ISBN number, which is essentially the barcode on the back. That is how, when you scan it, it tells somebody, what the book is. So each edition of a book has to have its own individual barcode. So there's a different ISBN for ebook, paperback, hardcover, audiobook, graphic novel, etc. And so you need to have two separate ones when you're doing hardcover or paperback. And then as far as design goes, a lot of it depends on the style of hardcover you want to go with. If it's a case laminate, means that it's a actual hard cover with the cover printed onto it. That tends to be a little bit easier than a dust jacket, which is that flimsy paper that will fall off, and then your book's running around naked on your bookshelf for eternity because no one can ever find it, or the toddlers have taken it and shredded it. Both of which are possibilities, or the dog ate it. Like, there's a whole list of things for the dust jackets. So depending on what you're doing, there's a lot of design elements that change. The dust jackets, technically, it's a wider cover because you have to account for the fold. Alexandra did campaign enough, and she hit the hardcover goal. So hardcover will be available, and it will be a dust jacketed case laminate, which it's a mouthful to say, but it is absolutely gorgeous. So she actually gets two covers. So she has her original color with a little bit extra on the flaps, and then the hardcover has a secret cover on the actual case laminate portion of it that Benita designed with a quote from the book, and it all flows beautifully together. So you guys can look forward to that. We publish it through Ingram Spark, which is Ingram Entertainment Group. And so that is where everything is officially printed from. So like when you order it, say from barnesandnobles.com, or eventually once it's synced up with Amazon, it will print from there and then ship to you guys. So it's a lot of print on demand. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the hardback versus paperback. and kind of how they're produced. This one was answered to, I would say, to an extent. You did talk about book 2, but is it a series or a duology?
To be answered at another date. Okay, like full disclosure, I actually have taken down notes and have ideas for more than 2 books. But yeah, we need to think about it more.
You know, when you create such a great world building, I think it's a waste just for 1 book or 2 even, I think.
I would agree.
You know, when I first wrote it, I actually did kind of see it more as a standalone, but then you and I were talking, Stephen, and I was thinking about it more, and I'm like, no, it really should be at least 2 books, and yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. And then we had excited for the political intrigue. I also agree. I think, especially with your writing, Alexandra, because like I was reading it and I'm like, I feel like I'm a layman, and some of the philosophical terms, I'm like, I am having to brain really hard on this particular question. And so like the politics of it, like that's one of the reasons why I loved the Dune saga, was the political machinations, and plots within plots within plots.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing what that will look like in book 2, and then potentially what that would look like as the books kind of expand from there.
Also, I
Yeah.
feel like this book as like, or what makes a book like interesting is like, especially for the wider audience, could be, you know, each one of us has different interests, and when you have like like such variety in one book on, you know, political intrigue or heist or like world building or architecture, you know, you find your own thing that you really like about the book and you go with it. You know, it cannot be like one thing, one specific thing. It can be like 2 things, but you know, you have multiple things for, you know, for a variety of people, like they can, you know, have different taste and interests.
Yeah, very
So I think
true.
that can be interesting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, having lots of layers to it is always it's a art form, adding those layers in.
Yeah.
All over the board, super excited about book 2. I wholeheartedly agree. Oh, then that was the prompt. Let's see. I hadn't scrolled down far enough, that's why. So will it be possible for hardcover to be shipped in Europe? It should be. Typically when it comes to the actual publishing process, because we're not going directly through Amazon for the hardcover, essentially what they have to do is they have to talk to Ingram and see that the book is a part of Alexandra's essentially portfolio. And then once it's available on Amazon, you should be able to order it basically anywhere in the world. It will also be available. I mean, you'll be able to find these books anywhere books are sold. If Amazon doesn't pull it up within a reasonable amount of time, and I have to call and yell at them, then you can always try Barnes and Noble and see if you can purchase it through them. I don't know, is Barnes and Noble global, or is there?
They're not. They don't even ship to Europe, do they?
I never seen one. Maybe in the UK I seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah,
so then it would likely be through Amazon once it's synced up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that usually will take a few days. It's not uncommon for it to take a couple of weeks. That's how it was with my first book when I did my initial hardcover through Ingram. It had taken a period of time to be able to get Amazon to recognize it, which was a huge pain. But hopefully they've improved since 2020. I published it like the height of the pandemic, which was that's why I don't have any air left. So it was just because of that 1 year. So great questions, everybody. Absolutely fantastic. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them. Any other closing thoughts or anything that you had, Alexandra, as we look forward to your book being released officially in 4 days.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, other than it's just mind-boggling that it's about to be out in the world. And I wanted to thank again all the Kickstarter backers who supported it, everyone who's like read the book and given me feedback on it or supported me in any way. Honestly, thank you so much, and I hope you all enjoy it. Yeah.
Be a bummer not being able to celebrate with alcohol with Alex, but we already made peace with ourselves.
It'll be okay.
Ambrose, it's so proud of you, Alexandra. And for those of you who did back, the ebook was officially the link for the ebook was officially sent out for the backers. It was sent out this morning along with the link to the launch party. The ebook and paperback will be live on Amazon on the 20th of this month, and you'll be able to get it ordered. For the backers who are getting physical copies, you will see those probably starting to arrive most likely towards the new year in the States. We're at the point now where it's the holiday season, and Amazon takes its time getting things printed. So hopefully we'll be able to get those sent out as quickly as possible for you guys. But yeah, for all the backers who have supported Alexandra from the publishing company and from myself, thank you. We would not be here without you guys and your amazing support. And as a reminder that once you've gotten your books or your ebooks, please make sure to go to Amazon and leave a review, or leave a review on Goodreads. If you, I guess Amazon owns everything, but they own Goodreads, and so those reviews do show up and impact the ratings. And our goal is to help Alexandra rank in one of the categories that we've placed her in shortly after publishing. So tell your friends, let them all know, so we can help Alexandra's launch of her debut be the most successful that it possibly can be. So thank you guys again so much. Thank you, Alexandra and Lorenzo, for joining. Thank your grandparents for babysitting and managing the toddlers. My wife has been keeping the children wrangled this morning.
Yeah.
So,
wondering if buying a leash is it legal?
There's some days. There's some days, especially on the little ones, because they're not strong enough. Awesome. Well, guys, it's been wonderful talking with you. And for all the people who are watching and who joined in today, thank you for the amazing comments. Thank you for playing the game with us. And we look forward to seeing what the future holds for Alexandra. So thank you so much, guys, and have a great one. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.